Kain refused the sacrifice.
Oh my god, I can hardly believe it's happening. There aren't many games that drive people crazy, where the IP owner pulls it out of the drawer after 20 years to finally continue the story or finish it, or maybe repackage it as a remaster or remake. Most games are pretty mainstream in this regard, like Dino Crisis or Onimusha, but for me, perhaps my favorite childhood game, but definitely one of the story-driven games I replayed the most, which even back then was overshadowed by Tomb Raider, but now it has surprisingly made its way into the Remaster Hall of Fame. My dear old friend Soul Reaver is back. I always thought and still see it as not being such a popular game even back in the day, and today's generation probably hasn't even heard of it because it hasn't survived in any form. No TV series, no Fortnite skin, no TikTok edits either. The Legacy of Kain series is set in a dark fantasy, perhaps steampunk hybrid world, spanning hundreds of years in a vampire epic. The story can get quite complicated as it spans several centuries, twisting with time travel and featuring multiple protagonists. The series includes 5 games, well, technically 6, but let's not talk about the failed online attempt called Nosgoth. I mean, whose idea was it to resurrect a 10-year dead IP as a PvP game and hope thousands will play it suddenly? Basically, the story revolves around the pillars of this world, Nosgoth. The pillars are preserved by a group of sorcerers known as the Circle of Nine, each serving as the guardian of an individual pillar. When a guardian dies, a new one is born to take their place. In the prologue of Blue Dome and the first game, Ariel, the guardian of balance, is killed, and the resulting chain of events leads to the spiritual corruption of the pillars and their guardians. Enter one of our main characters, the young nobleman Kain, who is slaughtered by some bandits and resurrected by a necromancer, thus becoming the guardian of balance. Basically, the story of the first game is where Kain is tasked to hunt down all the guardians and restore the balance of Nosgoth. But his intoxication with the power he gains and the fact that he is meant to be the last guardian, meaning he should die as well in the end, leads him to refuse this sacrifice, dooming Nosgoth to corruption. Soul Reaver 1 and 2 picks up the story of Raziel, Kain's first lieutenant, who is sentenced to eternal damnation by Kain after an unintentional betrayal. But like his master, Raziel is resurrected and, following a similar path, sets out to hunt down his murdering brother-in and Kain himself. And I just stop right there. I don't want to spoil the story further. This is where Soul Reaver 1, Soul Reaver 2 and the third part of the Raziel and Kain trilogy, Defiance, come into play, which surprisingly did not make into the Remaster series. There is also Blood Omen 2, a story that takes place between Blood Omen and Soul Reaver 1. In this game, we control the young vampire Kain, which serves as a supplementary story to Soul Reaver basically. It's not necessarily an essential story, and not even the best game of the series to say the least, but if someone has grown tired of all the Legacy of Kain games, it's worth trying. Okay, so the game is almost a Tomb Raider clone. You wander around, solve puzzles, platform, fight, wander around, boss fight, then rinse and repeat. What really sets this game apart is its epic story, the incredibly written Shakespearean script. I'll drop that the writer is Amy Hennig, by the way, who is also responsible for a small title called Uncharted. On top of that, the icing on the cake is the masterful voice acting, the dark, eerie, yet fascinating world of Nosgoth with its eerie vampires, various monsters, mutations, or even its humans. And let's not forget the soundtrack. Soundtrack like which we haven't heard in another game since, dynamically following the game's mood and fitting perfectly into every scenery of Nosgoth. Also, here is a fun fact, there is a single loading screen in the entire game. Yes, I think this was the very first game to do that, to be honest. And by the way, I'm only talking here about the original PlayStation 1 game, not even about the remaster. As for the remaster, the game was developed by Aspyr, who is also responsible for the Tomb Raider trilogy remaster, which was quite successful. It might be one of the best remasters on the market so far. So if they do even a half-hearted job, Soul Reaver fans will still benefit from it a lot. I say this because we don't know much about the game, considering it's coming out in early December, and compared to how much information we received about the Tomb Raider remaster 2 months before its release. The publisher Crystal Dynamics has a website that reveals very little, but ultimately the important things are there, and the game will be here eventually, and that's what all matters. The game will be beautifully restored with higher resolution textures, models and VFX, and we can toggle instantly between original graphics and the new one. New features will include a new photo mode, also navigation in Nosgoth with a brand new map and compass. On top, new control options, also upgraded camera system and an interactive lore map where we can view never before seen concept art as well. Honestly, I still cannot believe it's coming out. I really hope this is good for the Reaver IP and leads to more games. I also hope that more forgotten decent IPs will fall under Crystal Dynamics umbrella, because they just form a strong duo with Aspyr in terms of remasters. No matter how cheap the remake and remaster approach might sound, the way this team does it, carefully preserving the original game for longtime fans while wrapping it in a new desirable package for the new gamers, this is what I call respecting and treating well the source material. I was Gabe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, keep gaming.
You must save yourself, Raziel. Janos!